Hey, YouTubers. I thought I would take a couple minutes tonight, maybe 5, 10 minutes, and I would talk about a lot of what's going on with the various states in the Union, discussing reopening and, well, I mean, reopening. Were they even closed in the first place? I mean, people are throwing around this new term of art that the states are going to reopen. But the states were never closed. The states forced everybody else to close. Um, and suffer for the state's benefit. I mean, you look at the state of New Jersey, all right, folks? Like any other disaster or unplanned life situation that occurs and the government responds to it, there are winners and there are losers, all right? In this whole ball of worms, call it whatever you will, the state has repeatedly done things for no rhyme or reason other than to bolster political and corporate gains. And I think that largely in part, New Jersey has fallen in lockstep with the other states in the Union in terms of the rules that they're setting and why they're setting it. I mean, like right now, we've reached the pinnacle that corporate greed and corporate benefit is being amplified and is visible to the extent that we've never really seen this. Okay, I mean, Murphy for a while kind of uttered or suggested a rule that non-urgent and non-immediate um, sections of our grocers or of our essential services provider, um, such as um, Walmart, um, and Amazon.com, would be prohibited from engaging in non essential transactions. So, for instance, Amazon would be unallowed or disallowed from selling books or selling golf clubs or things of that nature, the things that I buy off Amazon. And basically, that idea went to the wayside. But now you ask yourself, folks, okay, if places like Walmart and Amazon are open and are allowed to deliver goods, why should they receive a default exemption from the essential services rule to provide non essential goods to the general public and make profits that are unprecedented in the modern world? Okay, folks, because all these mom and pop retailers who may own a bookstore, which there aren't a whole lot of them left anymore, or may own a hardware store or um, a sporting goods store, which there's quite a few mom and pop sporting goods stores in Central Jersey. They're going out of business. They're losing money to the extent that they're not going to be able to recoup to them. But yet, Murphy has permitted the essential service providers, whether they be warehouse or retail, to engage in non essential transactions and make a ton of money off of them. And I do want to, my very good friend, Mr. John Van Dyke, has said to explain how Murphy has the power to nullify the Bill of Rights. Well, I don't think that the government response to the corona epidemic, if that's even what you want to call it, it really is the con virus. I like that terminology. But I really don't think that the government response can be partisanized or can be weaponized in terms of partisan politics. I think that our government on the state and federal levels, as a collective whole, has adopted policies that are scary and lack a fundamental justification across the board. Okay? Why should I sacrifice my rights? Why should I sacrifice my right to go golfing, my right to get fresh air, my my right to take a long walk in a county park, simply so that an 88-year-old man who was going to, not to sound callous, but so an 88-year-old man who was going to die in 5 or 6 months anyway will get an extra couple months. I mean, or so that of a stage 4 cancer patient isn't going to succumb immediately. That's essentially what it is. The majority of these deaths that have occurred in people that are affected with COVID-19 have been inflated, folks, okay, and marketed. That's a good word. They've been marketed as COVID deaths for the purpose of maximizing the federal aid that the states are going to get. What most people don't get, and Dr. Fauci really has kind of tried to ignore it and doesn't want to answer this question. The head of the CDC has ignored it and danced around it as well. And the head of FEMA has also, to varying extents, danced around the question well. But it deals with reporting on death certificates. And reporting on death certificates, most people outside of the legal and political realm are probably unaware of it. But states' rights issue. And what that means is that the federal government has no say as to how states report causes of death on death certificates. The federal government has absolutely no say. Now, here's where the federal government can influence it, even though they cannot regulate it. Sometime in the foreseeable future, my guess is going to be the next 4 to 6 months. We're going to reach not only a plateau is going to be a marginalization, but we're going to reach almost a universal reopening, where we're going to be close to, we're not going to be precisely where we were at. And when that occurs, it's going to be time to split up the pie. And what that means is who gets what. All right? Contrary to popular belief, the U.S. government is still an entity of finite resources. All right? If they keep on doing what they're doing by creating all of these wackadoodle ideas like corona relief, corporate and individual in nature, and what's the other word I was going to use? Not just corona relief. Also, the other corona ideas like universal income. What's going to happen is the federal government is going to go bankrupt ASAP. And that's not going to jive well with the American people. I mean, if our federal deficit increases exponentially because of this coronavirus. So right now, Governor Murphy, what he is doing and what he has done is he has essentially revised the criterion for reporting causes of deaths. And I know not for a fact, but Oprah requests are very difficult to obtain these days, is that he has encouraged every registrar in most municipalities in every county and incentivized them to increase the likelihood that a cause of death will be reported as a COVID death, because sometime down the road, the president and Congress are going to be giving more state funding for COVID-related deaths and COVID-based statistics. Now, I want to right now touch upon Um, Something that my good friend John Van Dyke, Gunnison Undercover, has brought up, and it's a valuable point as to how can the governor of New Jersey nullify the Bill of Rights. Um, he can't. He can't. He does not have the power or the constitutional or institutional authority to negate your rights within the first two 10th Amendments of the United States Constitution. Nor does he have the right to abridge your rights under the New Jersey Constitution, which leads to a plethora of issues. But I don't accept the view. I reject the view that the Constitution is a suicide pact. It is not. The Constitution is a fluid standard. It does not apply the same time in peacetime as it does in war. It does not apply the same in person as it would in a cyber or digital or virtual reality. The Constitution it's not a living document, but its applications are still not fully realized. And this is one of these things, folks. Okay, and I was thinking about this on my drive to work yesterday. Okay, if the founders back in the 18th century thought about a situation like this, would they have considered the governor's actions to have compromised the Bill of Rights? Would they have considered Governor Murphy's actions to be per se unconstitutional? And the answer that I come to is twofold. Okay. In the last 120 years of Supreme Court precedent and the precedent that's kind of come out of multiple circuits, courts of appeal, have almost universally arrived at the conclusion that in certain instances of national and state emergency, state governors can affect various measures which in peacetime or normal times would be considered unconstitutional. There's a case that I'm freestyling here. I don't have all my notes in front of me. I haven't prepared down to a T because obviously I can't foresee every question. I don't have a crystal ball in front of me. But there is a case from, I believe, the Twin Cities area, Minnesota's, that deals with a state governor closing the borders to all goods in the turn of the century, the early 1900s, because at that time there was a poultry and a cattle disease that was circulating the country. So a farmer in one of the Midwestern states, I believe it was Minnesota, but don't quote me, it could have been Wisconsin, brought an action claiming that the state governor did not have the constitutional authority to enact that measure or to take that action. And the Supreme Court held unanimously, all nine of them, sometime at the turn of the century, early 1900s, that a state governor could in fact take emergency actions to protect the welfare of the people in his state in times of emergency. So that's step one. There are instances where a governor can do that. Now, here's the secondary question. And this is a much, much closer call. And for a judge to try and make this without substituting his or her judgment for the representative branches is a tough call. Has a sufficient justification or evidentiary basis been proffered for one to conclude or one to believe that an emergency exists to infringe on the exercise of individual rights? And I want to go back. Gunnison said something very. Cattle do not have rights. That's no individual freedom. Well, it is. It is, especially at that time. If you have the Constitution protects three types of interest: life, liberty, and property interest. Now, if you look at 1910's socioeconomic climate, 90% of Americans earned their income either in a factory or a farm. So then, right there off the bat, you have a loss of property. Then, if you look at the loss of cattle and the loss of imported cattle and poultry, at least 90% of Americans relied upon that as a food source. Then you also have state borders being shut back then in the 19 teens by a governor's authority. He was positioning guard troops and state troopers on the borders to shut them down. So then you have an ingress egress issue where freedom of movement's being constricted. So I do feel that while that case and no case, I'm not going to try and blow smoke up your asses, folks, and say that, oh, this case has been decided hypothetically. It hasn't. But are there certain analogs, that touch upon certain aspects of what's going on now? Of course there are. Do I feed in or do I subscribe to the theory that this is George Orwell's 1984? No. But I'll tell you what, if we don't watch out and we don't do what we can to exercise the rights that the framers conveyed to us, not just in the federal, but also the state constitution, we're, as Ronald Reagan said, we're one generation away from losing our freedom. And I believe that. I do. What I do think is the biggest things that you and I have to be concerned about are the things that we least recognize or think about. And I'm going to bring up an interesting point in a minute. Take a look around you, folks. Right now, I couldn't do what I would do in ordinary times. I can't go to a council meeting in Keyport. I can't go into the borough hall in, I don't know, Atlantic Highlands and file an Oprah request. I simply cannot hold my government accountable or exercise my rights to be heard as a citizen the same way that I could pre-corona. And I like that term, pre-corona. What's the other thing I can't do? If I were to be arrested today, or you were to be arrested today for a serious crime, our right to due process would be lessened. Okay? You would not have the right and the availability to counsel. Okay? You would not have counsel provided for you in the same sense. You would probably not be brought before a judge in personam. There's a stall on all civil jury trials, which means that your right to court would be compromised. These are the things that people don't recognize. And the other thing that you probably aren't aware of is the majority of New Jersey towns have curtailed your rights to services. And I'll give you an example. Before Corona, you had a right to file an Oprah request and get it back within 7 business days. All right, that's the limit, 7. All right. Now, that rule has went out the window, and what's replaced it is who the hell knows. It's the truth. I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing because I think that the majority of the concerns that I've just expressed or conveyed in regards to the corona pandemic are going to be resolved through litigation that's going to occur probably between a state governor and the White House. And I think that some people have seen the stage being set for this. And what this is going to do is it's going to delineate or clarify the powers of the presidency under Article 2 of the U.S. Constitution and the rights of the state government under Article 5 of the U.S. Constitution, the Equal Sovereign Clause, as well as the 10th Amendment's provision about states' rights. This is going to delineate who can do what, when, where, and how. I want to see, out of the 6 people watching right now, all 6 of you guys, if anybody can guess what state governor, probably for political reasons, will probably file suit in federal court against Donald Trump regarding the forced opening of states. It's not Uncle Phil here in Jersey. Murphy will bankrupt the state and force Trump to give money. That's true. That's true. That's true. But John, Murphy's not going to be the first person that does that. Hiram Biffenham, New York. Ding, 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 ding. Cuomo has made it known, he's alluded to the fact on multiple occasions that he intends to be the first and last voice as to when New York can reopen. You know what I would say if I were Trump, and what I think that the White House and Congress are going to say? That's fine. You can be the first and last voice. But when the dust settles and the smoke clears, this is what you're going to get in federal aid for Corona. Zero, zilch, nada, nothing. It's amazing how in this country money talks and bullshit walks. Right, wrong, or anywhere in between. That's the American way. And that's the way that Donnie Trump will bend Mario Cuomo's kid, Andrew Cuomo, over. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, folks, I'm taking a 5 to 10 minute break. I'm going to come back here with phone interaction and the availability to call on the phone, and I'm going to touch upon a video posted by a certain citizen retarded journalist that we all know and love. So at 9:15, I'm going to come back. Until then, take it easy, folks.